Huh. Let me see if I can fix it.
Well, I
That's
mean, you know, it's not a good or powerful day if you don't have at least some sort of interference or hiccup that comes up, right?
looks like they wiped everything on
Oh
here.
no.
Usually we have the Soulogy thing in the background, but I don't see it. How weird is that? Oh, they got a bunch of new stuff, so they wiped out mine. Okay, let's see what this looks like. That's a little bit.
Ooh, yeah.
How's that? Let's try
That
something like. Let's see.
Talk about setting the mood, Todd.
What do you think? What do you think? Should we do just a picture or a video like that? I guess we'll try this.
this is nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is cool. Let's see which.
Ooh, it does move.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
nice.
it moves.
Oh, amazing.
I
I
think
love
maybe.
that.
Which one do you like better? The first one, this one, or the other one?
I can't see them moving right now. They just started moving for a second on the
Oh
last.
yeah, it's probably your signal. It's all right. Oh, we already got 39 people in the house. Okay.
Aloha,
So yeah,
Pepper.
here we go. We got yeah, people coming in. Let's see: Robbie Watson, Sherry Duncan, Sarah Ray, Trisha Shanagan. Hi, Trisha, brave, beautiful sister. She is incredible. We need to get you back on here and right on. So we have, of course, everybody knows Ryan Melchizedek. He's been on twice in the last 3 or 4 months. And he has his beautiful, beloved partner here, Reza Raia,
Mhm.
and it's a pleasure to have you both here. How long has this been going on? How long have you guys been? Not that the linear timeline means anything, but I'm just curious to get just to kind of get a background on it. How long has this been going on? How did you guys meet?
We've been together for about 2.5 years now.
Hmm.
Also, just hello, brother. It's lovely to meet you.
Sure.
Um, yes. But yeah, we've been together for about 2.5 years now. We met at the end of June in 2019. And I was actually invited to a ceremony that was being held in Montana. And I don't know, you're probably familiar with like the 12 crystal skulls that are around the planet. So they were bringing the 13th skull there for a ceremony to do at Chief Mountain there with the Blackfoot tribe.
Wow.
And I was invited to this ceremony, and I decided to bring a close friend of mine, a dear sister, with me as well on this adventure to Montana. And on the last day when we were there, we decided that we all were meant to go to the ancient builder race Montana megaliths with the skull and do some energy work there. And on the morning of, when we were all meeting in the hotel room and we were kind of figuring out what the plan was going to be for the day, I was talking to someone, and all of a sudden, I felt this presence enter the room. And I never experienced this before, but my body lit up. And all of a sudden, I actually kind of went into a panic attack mode for a second. I started like hyperventilating, and I was like, what is going on? Why is my body freaking out right now? And sure enough, that was when Ryan entered the room, and he had a friend with him as well. And I actually ended up having to go into the corner of the room. I couldn't even like go near him. I couldn't even look at him.
So did you know he was the reason that you were lighting up?
No, in the moment I had no idea what was going on. Yeah, it was very like it all happened really quickly, and I had no idea what was happening to me. So I was just kind of trying to catch my ground and figure out what was going on. And so I went to the corner of the room, and this is when they entered, and everyone started talking and meeting, and I was kind of just like trying to figure out what's going on with my field. And then from there, we ended up leaving to go to, everyone decided we were going to go to this giant pyramid, which is now overgrown. So it looks like a giant mountain, but it's a massive pyramid
Wow.
that's one of the sacred sites for the megaliths. That there's so many different ones throughout Montana. But we ended up going there, and we ended up doing a really powerful ceremony there. And then afterwards, we were able to connect and talk a little bit more. And Ryan invited my friend and I to come stay with him because otherwise we had like a 10-hour drive to get back home. And I really didn't want to have to drive, especially since at that point I think it was like already sundown. It was like 6 p.m. or 7 p.m.
Wow.
And yeah, so he invited us, and he was talking about how he had a copper pyramid in his own home. And so we're like, yeah, let's go. So we ended up all driving together to his place. And at the time, he was in Spokane. And then that night, we were all pretty tired, so we went to bed. The next day, though, is when things started to pick up and started to get interesting, I would say.
Before my beloved expresses part 2 on this, I always love it when people ask how we meet, because it's totally like you got the feminine side of the experience of what it's like coming in, and then you've got like the masculine, like my side of what it's like coming in. And because of my path and my journey, I kind of, for especially the last like 8 years, have just been like full on, like 100% devoted service dedication. So when me and her came together, it was maybe like 100% on my side, like 3 to 5% on her side. So it was a very radical, like, oh, what is going on? And kind of have to like, she had to get sped up while I had to get slowed down, so to speak, if that makes, to come into like a harmony state. But before on the part 1, because she had, just like she had expressed, she had traveled with her beloved sister, another close sister of ours, and they were just like, oh, we're gonna go over to Montana to go to Chief Mountain, because originally they were going to meet with the Blackfoot tribes and do this work up at Chief Mountain. Now for me, during this time, I kind of briefly seeded this in our first interviews, but there was a period where I had to spend about 46 days downstepping the Solar Christ masculine template in real time during this incarnation. And this was a period that many times I did not think I would survive. But outside of this, let's just say it was 46 days. I had about a 24-hour break before I had 2 weeks, before I had about a 3-day break. And then I had about 6 weeks of the universe going Circus Olay, showing me everything that was going on and reminding me of who I am. Because even though I've been shown it 1,000 times, I'm like, yeah, but what if I'm not? And so, and then of course, after layer upon layer upon layer, I was being shown what was about to happen here coming over the next couple of years. Because like we've been saying for the last like 6-7 years since this became very deep gnosis, is it's most accurate to say like we came back from the future to this present time to actually to the focal point where we've already experienced the fall. We already know the trajectory of where it's gone. We've hit the point where we believe has been isolated to be able to make some new decisions that can actually circumvent that fall trajectory and like bring us into alignment with the path that we are always intended to go on. So there was a point though when I was being shown what had happened and what we were approaching, which was scarier to me than anything I could have even perceived as death and stuff like that. Even though on the highest levels it's not as bad as we perceive it here, but here it's still like we do not want this. So then I had this whole thing where I was basically told that I could continue staying where I was at, and I could continue transducing frequencies and working in this realm from behind the scenes, and that I was solid, that everything was good. But that in doing so, I would have to be okay with knowing that a vast majority of the planet and the vast majority of the life forms here would not make it through this transition period that was going to occur. And that this didn't have to be viewed as a bad thing. It was simply a choice and what was going to be overseen. And that at the same time, that if we did want to change this, that it would be required to find the remaining 12 council members, plus my beloved, to reform our council of 14 and to reclaim the sacred sciences and to teach these within a group to begin to actually help reenact these keys, to then help each other reclaim and remember these, to put these in action for full liberation of this planet and all angelic tribes. Now, when I was shown the 2 options, I made the decision to go find my family. And I was told, get up, leave. And I was terrified at this point. I had already gone through almost 3 months of insanity. I had $50 to my name and a gas card. And my parents were like, here's some gas for your car because you have no money. And I'm like, well, I've got this. I got $50. I have no plans, nowhere to go. I'm being told to grab my backpack, get in the car, and go right now. And so I was terrified, but I got in the car. I left. Drove back down to Southern Oregon, and ironically, in a place that was so comfortable for me, normally my entire life, I was drowning. I had been at such a high frequency that to come into simply places that are already higher frequencies that I was very comfortable with were drastically lower for me. And so I felt like I was drowning when during this week I was like, I need to make money. I need to actually be able to take care of myself. But at the same time, I'm getting a call from Bill, who's the protector of the Mitchell Hedges skull, the crystal skull. And over, he's like, I'm receiving, you need to be up here in Montana. And I'm like, Bill, like, that's like a 15-hour drive for me. Like, I can barely handle my own reality right now. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Like, I know I'm supposed to be down here, supposed to be bridging, but I also feel that there's something up there. But for me, the Blackfoot tribe and Chief Mountain was not going off on my radar. So I was like, I don't feel I need to be there. And while I was down there, I just started going into panic attacks and I could not ground my energy. And my one friend came over and he was like, dude, he's like, I've never seen you like this. He's like, I literally just made $2,000. He's like, I heard that you were getting invited to go to Montana. He's like, can I just sponsor you to go on a pilgrimage and will you let me come with you? And the two of us can just go up to Montana and we can go on this journey. And I was like, all right, if you're going to fund it so I don't have to worry about the funds, I was like, yeah, let's get out of here because I can't handle this right now. So we're driving and we're just talking all night. I'm staying, it's like a 15-hour drive. And so I'm just driving. And even while my friend's sitting in the seat, my friend passes out and I'm all by myself one night, in the drive, feeling all by myself and alone and trying to message my one friend in Florida, being like, hey, do you have a moment to talk? And she wasn't getting back to me because she was doing some readings. And so then I was all alone and all of a sudden, I just remembered, because I go back and forth to remember how connected we are with our family versus how we can perceive to be disconnected. So then I just start talking to our Elohim family and to all of our family that I'm just like, oh my gosh, and I forget that I don't have to talk to anybody. You guys are how do I always forget this? So next thing you know, I'm in a 2-3 hour conversation. My friend from Florida tries giving me a call. I'm like, I don't even want to talk on the phone. This is a great conversation. And we start diving in because I've got these questions about these private transmissions that I was streaming through a recorder and to certain individuals. But then some very high level channels starting 2 to 3 months later started to take my streams and put them out, kind of change some of the words and claim from them to be from certain. It was 90% of what we were saying, but twisting just enough of it and then claiming it was from certain things, but on a delay, months after we put this out into the collective. So, but I always am discerning. And so he was talking about Lyrons and the royal houses and the family of Michael and all of this stuff. And so I was like, Lyrons. I was like, because I only speak of what I actually know. And I was like, this is everything we're sharing and speaking. I was like, Lyrons. I was like, I feel it, but I was like, are they real? Are they not real? Is that my family? Is that you? Is that us? I was like, all right, you guys. I was like, that's it. I need to know who the Lyrons are very clearly. So I was like setting the time. I was like, all right. I was like, I'll say about 3 weeks. I'll be patient for 3 weeks. Anything other than 3 weeks is absolutely ridiculous. I was like, if you don't give me an answer in the next 3 weeks, I'm going every single day. I'm going to be like, you guys, until I know the truth, show me what's going on. So anyway, I set that goal. Then we get there, we drive through the night. We get to where we were supposed to go. Turned out I called because while we're driving there too, we're getting lost. We accidentally drive through the border of Canada twice. I've got a pyramid on my head and stuff. So the people at the Canadian border are probably like, who are these people? But finally, as I'm all getting frustrated, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I don't even want to be at this Chief Mountain. I'm like, we're in Montana. I'm like, the skull is meant to go to the megaliths while we were out here. And so next thing you know, we get to the Chief Mountain and we call, we're like, where are you guys? And they're like, actually, you took a long time and we had to leave a couple hours ago because the skull just told Bill immediately, we got to go to the megaliths. And I was like, oh yeah, sweet. I was like, well, we'll meet you guys over there. So as we're driving over there, I'm like, yep, after the megaliths, I'm like, we need to take the skull to a pyramid. It's imperative the skull goes to a pyramid. next thing you know, we get there, and sure enough, like, and this is when we had meeting, but they were all, it was all kind of like hypey because people were like, it turns out the scroll says we need to take it to the 70 million year old ancient builder race pyramid in Montana. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly where we need to go. So then we take it over there, and this is when I meet, and like, this is the first time I actually get to speak with my beloved and her friend, because we're there and there's a group of people, but almost everybody's older, like other than her and her friend and me and my one friend, who even my other friends in his like late 40s and stuff. Everybody, we were the youngest people out of everybody there. Yeah. And so when we get there, oh my gosh, I don't know, what am I just gonna hit with a giant burst of energy? So when we get there, it's something that at first everybody's around, and I actually keep kind of like, I didn't know she was having like panic attacks, like when I entered.
So this is that morning.
Yes, this is when we came together, and we hadn't spoken or anything, but I was just tuning into the energies in the group, and I kept like just feeling so strongly like called over to my beloved. But I was like, because she had this little hoodie and like the way her hair was, I was like, I didn't know how old she was. And I was like, with all these, I was like, is she like 16 years old with her like grandma or someone here? I was like, okay, I can't be that guy.
So
like,
are you saying that you realized you had some inkling of who she was from the get-go?
No, I just, out of the entire group there, her energy was just like, was just sparking something in me that was like very igniting, but also very conflicting, because I'm like at a spiritual retreat with somebody that could either be 21 or 16 and most likely with their grandma. And I was not about to go up. And I'm also really awkward when it comes to flirting and stuff like that. I kind of just eat, and it magnetizes or not. And so it was a little bit more confusing for me.
Both of us were like, it was funny. It was both of us were having like our own versions of like butterflies and like not able to like talk or look at each other, and we were both like going through our own versions of like trying to figure out like what was going on, what was different, why we were feeling this like energy that I've never felt before. I'm sure it was new for him as well. So it was like when we were in this hotel room,
like amazing, but so confusing at the same time.
When we're in this hotel room, and it's like, you know, it's not a very big room, and there's quite a lot. There was a few people with us. I think there was like at least 10 or more of us in there. Yeah. You know, he's on one side of the room, I'm on the other side of the room. I'm like looking over, but I'm like not able to fully look at him, and because every time I looked at him, my whole body would freak out, so I couldn't look at him. And so it's just like this back and forth thing that was going on for quite a while everyone was talking and figuring things out. And then of course, you know, from the hotel room, because we were up on, I can't remember which floor it was, but we had to take the elevator to be able to get back down to the lobby to get out of the hotel. And so, of course, everyone goes to the elevator, and everyone's like cramming into this tiny little elevator. And still, like, I'm on one side of the elevator, he's on the other side, and we're like still having this interesting phenomena that's going on between us. And I still can't look at him. I'm just like, what's going on? And I'm sure, you know, he was feeling a similar way. And and we're just in this elevator, and I'm just like, I don't know what's happening. I'm trying to like take deep breaths and kind of calm down. And and then from there, we ended up getting to the lobby, and we ended up heading from there to the pyramid.
And it was
we did ceremony at.
And it was when we were at the pyramid that like, because I kind of just go wherever the energy's pulling me in most, and I'm being called. And this was the first time her and her friend were by themselves. So I was like, all right, even if she is with her grandma, I was like, this is the time to get to go say hi. And so,
I hope her friend's not listening. I don't know how old she is, but I hope she's
so much love
she's probably just chuckling if she is listening.
Yeah.
But because it was actually her, because my beloved, she can be like a lot more quieter and a lot more like shy and reserved, where I'm much more like, and her friend that she was with is a lot similar to me too. So it makes it a little bit easier to be more open about things that somebody's more shy might not say as much. Yeah. So because of the conversation last night, like what that I had been having with like our Elohim family and certain of our orders about the Lyrons and me, I was like, I need to know. I was like, I want to find my Lyron family. family. So then I was there. I was like, are you guys by chance Lyron? Or do you know anything about Lyrons? And they were like, we're Lyron.
Yeah.
And I'm like, ah! And so I felt like I exploded into confetti. And I was just like so excited. And all these older individuals were just like really triggered by how, because the four of them celebrating, like, we found each other.
So at some point you busted the move and asked her to come to your place.
Well, basically, essentially it went where the four of us had to come together at 4, and this was the first configuration. It's kind of like what the 2 of us hold with Richard and Rosalie Melchizedek at that point for our original family, but this was certain individuals that held a facet of those keys that were able to hold a level of that alchemy with us in the beginning. And so something we'll explain at another time. But it was there that the 4 of us came together, and immediately we ended up having to biolocate with the skull into the center of the pyramid, because we didn't know this until it was there.
Yeah.
But the ancient the Montana holds some of the ancient builder race megalith ruins, similar to like Avebury Henge and stuff in the UK. Ancient Elohim builder, or over the one Avebury Henge is Elohim architecture. But these hold a lot of the records for the original Aeonic pairings, like the original sacred marriage records, a lot of the records and templates for the diamond silicate matrix, like the actual resurrection sequences for the angelic tribes. And a lot of these architectures, because of the inorganic wobble and frequency blending on our planet, you can't even see a lot of the ancient builder race ruins, and the ones that we can see have become largely inactive or dormant at this density. But on the higher levels and on the higher densities, they are extremely active, and they are starting to come into a state of awareness that we are able to start to see. But within these, there's something that, even though the pyramids, just like the pyramids in Giza and stuff like that, are like dormant or dead, so to speak, in comparison to how they used to be, they're like a computer where you can still go in and get the core codex out of the hard drive.
Mm.
So the skulls, which is a lot that we can share about these at another time as well. The skulls themselves work as like a hard drive. And so even if you look at the Mitchell Hedges skull video from 2 summers ago, when the 4 of us, my beloved and I, Rosalie and Richard, came in, we had to activate a specific Blu-ray codex within the Mitchell Hedges skull, because there's a caretaker of it, but unless you are somebody that holds a certain codex and actually is in alignment to certain things, you'll never be able to access what's truly in it. And that's part of what's asking to happen 2022 to 2024, is for the first time ever, these to be fully unlocked. But at that point right now, they have to be exchanged to certain individuals. There's certain things that still need to happen between 2022 to 2024 to allow this to happen. But we've been working in stages when we can, outside of the egos and the limiting factors of others that kind of get a little bit, are very attached to the old world way of things and are having a hard time accepting this bridge into something new. So when we came together on the video, you can actually see this, and I might even just take some screenshots from the video and post it on Facebook sometime, because twice in there you'll see me bring in 2 codes and after I bring in each one and then activate my heart, it's the skull ignites in a massive like aqua, platinum, blue, because we're releasing these certain Blu-ray codes from them. But in the very beginning, when we came together, it was something that when we were biolocating with the skull basically came to life, and like the 4 of us went into the actual pyramid. It's a 70 million year old ancient builder race pyramid, and we had to upload ancient builder race codes from the pyramid into the skull itself. And so it was from that point that immediately I received the skull had to come to where we were over in Spokane, Washington, which was consecrated about 1,000 years ago. It was supposed to be the original capital of Washington State before they brought a bunch of indigenous and Chinese workers and children in, did a massive blood sacrifice ritual, burnt the city to the ground with a lot of them in there, then built the ruins on top of that. And tried to seal one of the most sacred portal locations on the planet, and then inverted it and put the capital on the exact opposite to where it's at. So without going into it, though, this is very sacred indigenous land. It translates to the city of the children of the sun. It also holds architecture and an access point you can access through 0 point into a hyperspace dimension in no time. But this had to be brought over. And at that point, Bill, who's the caretaker, he's like, I'm not going 6 hours over here, and like I tell everybody, I'm like, at this point, it's like we can try to say whatever we want, but highest alignment always manifests. Like you're either in alignment and it's graceful and fun, or your ego is trying to make you feel like you're in alignment and it's stressful for you. So sure enough, it created this whole thing, and I was like, all right, we just got to go. And I was like, well, you guys come to my house with me, you know, and they were like, oh, it's halfway through. And they're like, Bill's not coming. I'm like, yeah, he says he's not, but I told this just, I'm like, did you see how in the skull's like, I'm going here. I'm like, we need to take it to Megalith. Goes to Megalith. I'm like, we need to take it to a pyramid. It needs to go to a pyramid. Now the caretaker is saying we're not going to bring it to the city that it has to go to. I'm like, it's coming here. So we drive here. Sure enough, we get here a few hours later, get a call, and our brother, who's the caretaker, he's like, all right, Skull says I have to come. Where are we going?
Yeah.
And so like it was this whole thing where basically that was, so then he brought it over, and then that's where, and you can begin. This is when the next stage, part 2, began.
Yeah, this is where we ended up going into a massive process, which I won't go into the details of that because we'll be here for forever otherwise. But we went into a massive process, and it was a configuration between the 4 of us. So it holds like that base 4 pillar prototype.
Which is a universal prototype to transduce the necessary organic tone.
We ended up going to this huge process activation. It started out with the skull, and then after Bill and the skull left and everything, it continued, and then we went throughout the night, and it went all night long. And it was an incredible experience. There was so much that unfolded. There was, we won't go into all the details on it, but basically, as we were making it into the next day, and as the sun was beginning to rise, and I think it was probably like between the hours of 5 or 6 a.m., Ryan and his friend had gone out into the backyard. I was still inside, and I was actually in the copper pyramid that he had in his living room. And my dear friend, my sister, was with me at the time, and we were both finishing this sequence that was happening between the 2 of us, and it was kind of this divine feminine sisterhood thing that was going on. And I'm sure they were going through something out in the backyard as well as this was happening. And then when that completed, at that point, because I had been inside pretty much the entire time all night long, and I barely had moved. The whole process for me was in the pyramid. And then at that point, when it was complete, then I felt guided to go outside. And so as I made my way out to the back porch, it was very dreamlike. It was like the birds were chirping, the sun was rising, everything was vibrant. I was like stepping out. All of a sudden, I felt like I was in a movie of sorts. It was like everything slowed down. And then next thing I knew, in front of me, Ryan was standing, and he was facing away from me at first, but he was standing in the center of the backyard. And then my friend went off and went to hang out with his friend. And so it was just Ryan and I in that moment. And I was standing there, and he at first was facing away from me, and then he turned around and looked directly at me. And then in that moment, we both locked eyes. And at this point, everything stopped. Like everything stopped. We went into a complete timeless space for me. And as we continued to hold our gazes with each other, we slowly began to walk towards each other. And as we walked towards each other, again, it was just like the frequencies, the field that was building, the waves that were building. It was like explosions that were just rippling out, like expanding the closer that we got to each other. And then when we finally were, I think, just like super close together, just looking into each other's eyes. We still hadn't touched each other, but we were very close to each other. In that moment, it was like all of a sudden, as I was looking into his face, I went through a whole life review, and I saw every single lifetime started shifting. This was the first time I've ever experienced this. I've only experienced this one other time with one other individual in my life, but never as significant and profound as this. And all of a sudden it was shifting, and it was moving through thousands and thousands and thousands of faces and lifetimes. And it was almost like I was being downloaded, but awakening and remembering all of the memories that came along with that. And it was happening really fast. And so I was just standing there and allowing for all of that to unfold. And then when that completed, In that moment, he had tears streaming down his face. I had tears streaming down my face, and I expressed to him, I was like, "You found me."
Wow.
And yeah, very profound for us. And then after that, we hugged each other and we gave each other a deep embrace, and it felt like lifetimes holding each other. And probably was only a couple of minutes, but again, it felt timeless. And massive explosion happened when we hugged.
And I don't know how to explain it because it was so brief, but it was like just enough to like pierce through a layer of like armoring and shielding and mirror tech and protection tech that had been placed around me. But constantly I've dealt in a life of people that claiming they could see that of who I am and trying to tell me who I am. And part of my journey of learning who I am has been through the gnosis of who I am not. And so it was something that I can't even remember. It was like during that process, it might even been what like had me turn around. And originally, I can't remember. There was something that was said. It might have been audibly, it might have been inaudibly, but it was like the first time in this incarnation where I like actually like felt seen and recognized for my actual self, like on a way that like I was told nobody would be able to see until each individual could embody true equality and could really understand what it means to like not only stand their sovereignty, but to treat each and every one of our family as absolute equals, regardless of our experience, roles, incarnations, or the keys that we may hold at any given time.
Yeah, it's one of the most beautiful things when you can just stand there authentically and be yourself and absolute acceptance of each other. And when you're surrendering in that moment and there's no judgment, everything is purely unconditional. And it's just the level of vulnerability, I would say, that begins to open up from both of us in that moment when we were sharing that, and just even throughout our journey together, as we deepen into that with each other and as we continue to strengthen that with each other, the more and more we open up, and the more and more because we have to keep reminding each other a lot too, like, hey, like, I love you, like, I'm here for you, this is a judgment-free space, like, I'm never going to judge you, you can be all that you are, you're allowed to be all that you are, and I accept all that you are. And this has been something that I try my best to bring to Ryan, and then he tries his best to bring to me, and we try our best to continue to fortify that for each other, because that's one of the most important things anyways, I feel, in a relationship.
Yeah, that's a powerful situation that happened in the backyard. We had something like that happen 3 years ago, where we morphed for about 45 minutes into all the different faces, off planet, off universe, the whole 9 yards. So I can relate to that. But there's always the human part, and I love what you said about, hey, I love you, I'm here. It's like the human consciously going, this is crazy, but this is where I'm coming from. Like, where did it go? Well, I got to ask this question first. Did you have your first kiss after that hug? And what was that like?
Did we?
No,
I don't think so.
I feel like was it when we came together like a couple weeks later?
No, I believe in that moment, and it's interesting that it took a little bit, but yeah, in that moment after that, it was so big for the both of us, and we were processing so much, because again, it was like massive explosions and energy, and the frequencies were extremely high, like higher than I had ever felt. And of course, like, the level of information and memories that were pouring in was a lot. So the both of us, I think, were actually just processing everything. We actually ended up sitting in the backyard for a while, and then it wasn't until we went back inside, and then we had our first kiss.
I was going to say, if you'd had it in that moment, you would have been like Enoch, and you would have risen to heaven in a ball of fire.
Well, it's just it's so interesting too, because especially when you refer to like the human side and everything, and you're like, when this is like this is crazy. For both of us have our own unique we have our own unique facets that we've had to work through or have had to go through in this life. And it is extraordinarily rare and unique, practically unheard of, to have an authentic Hieros-Gamos couple come together at the ages that we are. Very rarely does this ever happen, especially like Hieros-Gamos is not held in full by any single couple on the planet to date. There are certain handfuls of yes, right now. Like there are certain handfuls of couples that are close to this, and once this is restored, this will be able to be returned as an energetic energetic possibility for all couples and all hierogamic units. Like the actual understanding of what Hieros-Gamos is for both the personal journey and for the sacred union process is something that's been largely lost and forgotten, and is a huge pillar and component that we are being asked to restore to the earth kingdoms and to end this gnosis in an embodied state, not only through our union, but through what we can express and and demonstrate through our own embodiments and the sequential stages, because this is something that something we'll probably end up going into at later times, but Hieros-Gamos is the entire epitome of the war and attack that we have been under. Like to
say that again, because you lost me. The Hieros-Gamos is the epitome
Hieros,
of is the epitome of
It's around that.
So
what's been connected to.
yes, Hieros-Gamos at the core is the epitome of what the entire warring and fall is based around.
So basically, what is pure unconditional love is what's been I don't really care for the word, but attacked. It's what's been in other words, our focus has been diverted from that true frequency. I get that. Yeah.
And they've taken us so far, they've fragmented us so far away from this that like literally like the actual highest emanation of the purest love that we are truly able to feel cannot even enter this system. There are those that have built, that have acclimated the biggest heart spaces, have brought the biggest fields of love just to open up enough of what has been like held back from us. Yeah. And it's something that like, because we have, just like you can see people at a 3D level, so to speak, even like that have beautiful relationships and beautiful marriages. And certain times when we've talked about, because we're also learning how to express and how to share and how to speak that's not as triggering, because we're learning the terminologies, we're learning how to speak in a way that is like, just like if we're speaking to somebody that doesn't speak English, there's a language barrier. Now, even if we're speaking English, we've got to figure out how to express these terminologies in a way that can be received. Because when we tell people, for instance, that not one individual has been able to achieve true hierogamic union in millennia, like, or in reality in like aeons at this point, it's something, because even like the Yeshua, Mary, like the Christ missions and stuff like that, this was still a level of restoration because it was.
I mean, yeah, I can see that. I mean, I think we can get caught up in the story, but I'm wondering, just going back to what you're saying. And I don't know to the degree maybe, or to some of the specificities that you're talking about. Morgan's been downloading Hieros-Gamos since 1999. So she was very much in tune with what was going to happen. It sounds very similar to what your meeting was like,
the Hieros. Oh, sorry.
No. What I was going to say is that, the way things are, and I want to get back to the relationship definitely, but I want to plug this in. There just seems to be a shift between what's verbally explained versus actually just expanding that frequency between the two people that actually creates the conversion or the transformation for the collective. So I think to me, the emphasis, like just looking at the two of you, it's the third energy and the congruence that you hold with each other. No words are needed. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like tuning forks. But I get what you're saying about what the primary focus, if you really want to break it down, or the primary breakdown was in the true union, which obviously begins within ourselves. I wanted to ask you too. A lot of people. In fact, I just talked to a very good friend of mine. She's on here right now. There's been so much talk about twin flames. Morgan and I have been very open about the fact that we don't really care for the terms. Nothing wrong. I mean, no judgment, just something that we don't really identify with. There's been a lot of connotations that are not in alignment with what you're talking about and what you're carrying. But one of the things that everyone talks about is, we're all multidimensional. We all understand that, but we're still human, and we're in human bodies. Okay, and so my question is, because of what I've seen out there for the past 10 years in regard to this topic, is people talk about the false twin flame, or they talk about the mirrors activating and triggering each other. And I found that, with people that we've talked to and people that have been on the show, that's where the real expansion seems to come from. It's from the catalyst that are provided by the triggers provided to each other. Have you guys had that type of journey? Have you had to deal with the triggers that a partner can provide? And if so, how do you work through that? Do you do it individually? Do you do it together?
So this is amazing, because it does go. It's all in direct flow of what was being expressed before. So I'm going to work to very simply explain something, and it's beautiful because we work together in a way where if I'm starting to get too much on a side, she'll help like anchor it back into a certain location. So
Yeah.
it's a beautiful tandem.
We help ground each other.
So the Hierogamics, there's something that each dimension, we're building up, and this is going back just to touch on what was being expressed before about the Hierogamics. We're restoring the units 3D, 4D, 5D, 6D, 7D, 8D. Now the 9D, 10D, especially 11D, these are the issues where we have the biggest problems. Without going into these, the simplest way to put it, and so you'll have happy unions and in powerful unions that will, be in very harmonious states until these levels, until you actually get to organic templating at the 10th and 11th. This is where there's not one organic hierogamic or embodiment on the planet that's holding these organic eternal life templates. So it's something that the best way to describe this is it's like a magnet. You can have a magnet when they're in the proper polarities, positive and negative, they come together. But if you invert the magnets, it's like no matter how hard you push, you can try to squeeze them together and you might feel like it's coming together, but right minute it'll just slip away. And you got to try to break, like the magnets won't come together. You have to have the proper polarity, so to speak. So, or whatever the proper terminology would be for that. So this is something that this is why there are straight up there. It's the restoration of Hierogamics is one of the biggest service missions on the planet, and those that have undergone this have dealt with the biggest, worst, deepest, most attacks imaginable. And it's something, it does become easier as you get older. Most people that are holding authentic hierogamic unions right now have not even been sanctified to come in until they're close to around the age of 33 or in their 40s. Most people do not have the emotional maturity. Most people do not have the self-awareness to actually be able to face their mirror directly. This is what goes into the false twins and stuff like that, because there's various stages, and we will say like Hierogamics first begins as an internal process. For people that think Hierogamics begins with another individual, this is a false light perspective. This will only keep somebody fragmented from themselves. It is something that even for myself, I had my very first twin was also my first engaged relationship when I was 18. And after that, it put me on a very, very discerning path side. And it wasn't until my deeper spiritual emergence that I started to have channels, psychics, readings, profound synchronicities, bringing me individuals that were convinced they were my twin flames, my sacred union. I too had a resistance to the twin flame. I believed that this was more of from what I had seen, it was more of a damaging and a limiting thing. And I believed that anybody in their hearts that came together and truly wanted to grow had this opportunity. However, it was something that I had to make my own covenant process that I would not be in a relationship with any woman, any female, other than God and my highest self, until my mission was completed on this planet. And that only until then would it be safe for me to be with my beloved again. And so this is why when we came together, it actually was a lot for me, because I was not going to get into a relationship. And it took a lot for me to be shown that through our union, through our marriage, through the return of Hierogamics, this is the completion of our mission, and is what allows all of our, it just is the completion of our mission, to keep it simply. And so with the false twins, there's multiple sides that come in, because when there's many individuals, we can call them false twins because that is our perception that they were our twins. Yeah.
I think actually, like, the twin and false twin and even just twin flame has been severely misunderstood. I feel like the actual like understandings of, you know, even ascension itself has been misunderstood by many, and it's not anyone's fault. It's because, again, you know, we talk about the war, we talk about everything we've been going through, everything we've been dealing with, everything we've experienced, and the level of trauma that we now have in our own bodies from it that creates confusion. It creates doubt, the level of fear that we have from all that we've had to go through because of everything that's occurred. And so this confusion, you know, there's a lot of, it's like you have to read between the lines, because there's a lot of stuff that's been, you know, whether it's artificial or just straight out lies, deception, that's been interwoven in and through the entire, like this entire matrix that we're in, this entire universal system, through our bodies, our own DNA, everything. And so it creates a lot of confusion, because for those of us who are immersed in this system, like as soon as you incarnate onto this planet, you're getting plugged in, so to speak, into this system that's merged with an inorganic artificial construct. And so all of those frequencies that are then being pumped through your system, until you can start one by one unplugging from that false artificial matrix and start clearing out all of that stuff and start like really dissolving the illusion for yourself, and going through your own discernment process, it's incredibly confusing. You can't tell the difference between that which is organic and actual like source divine consciousness, and that which is inorganic and artificial and just like playing the imposter spirit to our true self. And so this level of confusion that's happened to us as a family, you know, this is why, like, you know, especially since Hierogamic and the true sacred union of masculine and feminine has been the most targeted, there's so much confusion around that. And so there's so much misunderstanding around that. There's because the level of trauma, everything that's held around that. And so like the twin flame, I believe that terminology, that in itself is actually very pure and is severely misunderstood. But because it's so misunderstood, and because there's so much around that, and because people are getting caught in consciousness traps and misunderstandings around that, it's now doing more of a harm than it is a good for us, which is why I feel a lot of us are feeling like it's time to release that entirely and move into something that everybody can start fresh and new and really begin to understand what the true sacred unification of masculine and feminine is, both within and throughout with our
And
sacred partner.
That final part, the both within and throughout, is the big aspect, because there's a level of discernment. Nobody can tell you who your true, like we have people come to us all the time being like, can you tell us who our true partner is?
Yeah.
Right, that's not our place to tell you, but we can say that many individuals who come work with us find their partner within days, weeks, or months after. And it's because of the codes that are held in our field. And there's this point though where there is a level of discernment, because there are multiple sides. Like there are people that can come together that'll just have nothing but peaceful, harmonious relationships where it's just bliss and euphoria, and they're seeing all these things and having all these visions, and people are convinced that this is their twin. This can be a false twin relationship, because when it's nothing but positivity, when you're just seeing all these visions, all this stuff, but you're not actually healing the things in your body, you're not being given actual mechanics for your ascension. This is why you see people in the spiritual community that are still aging, that are still dying. There are people that are like, oh, I've done all this. You're still locked in the same time lag, with the same limitations, the same matrix system. How much did you really break free from? This is the same thing with all the ascended masters and stuff. You know, we call them partially ascended masters. They hold certain things, but they never left this system. They're locked in here too. This is why it's like, do you really want to learn from people that are sick, or is it time for us to take care of ourselves and actually learn how to, you know, discern, how to be healthy, how to not rely on others to tell us, so we can actually start to have a solid foundation. So there's this side where just like that, people are like, oh, I found my twin. Everything's amazing. Now this is just the work, but they're actually not doing the work. And then there's another side where there's the people that come together that, are in very toxic relationships where they are being beaten or abused or neglected or, and just all of these things. But because that heart's like, oh, this is my twin, this is who I am, people subject themselves to traumatizing behavior. And it is something that has been weaponized against us too. Like my beloved said, twin flames, this concept of true divine union is an organic, sacred concept. Everything that we see over here has nothing, like our fallen family just takes these original concepts and tries to hijack them, pervert them, distort them. So they either want people to have an illusion of what a perfect relationship is, to stop doing the work and to not be open to go through the challenges and the toughness. Or they want people to not discern and be in a relationship where they can be abused and taken down so their growth can never occur. But because of this, when people actually come together to find a true union, and all of a sudden the deepest things all the times from your family, from your past relationships, from your friends, from past lives where you've been beaten, neglected, abused, talked down to, abandoned, all of these things, they've got to come up. We've got to get them out. And the only way we can ever get these things out is if somebody is there to actually bring enough of a similar frequency or something to trigger that. And then to hold space, because it's something that it's time to be released to get it out. And it's an important level of discernment for all partnerships to be like, hey, is this bringing up the things inside of me and giving the opportunity to help me work through them and get it out? Or is this somebody that is unconsciously actually abusing me, actually hurting me? Are they not working? Are they not self-aware? Like, is this a partnership that's helping me get free and it's just hard and I want to run away, but I'm choosing devotion. I'm choosing to stand in my power. Or is this something that's actually damaging, that's not okay, that's toxic, and I need to stand in my power knowing that this beloved brother or sister needs help and that I am that much closer to finding my true, authentic partner? Because we will say that, like, those that are meant to find their hierogamic partners, their authentic partners, will find them this life cycle and this timing, but it is because of the training and the initiations that have gone through. Nobody wants these relationships if you have not done enough of the shadow work, if you have not done enough of the inner work, and if you do not have the inner devotional template. Because even for us, we have to be careful of this our own selves, because it can be easy to get too much concerned about the other. But it's a perfect balance where we are in a marriage between our highest self, God, and each other. It is a trinity. And it is something that, because of the state of fall that we are in, if we are, and recognizing that we are resurrecting the Christed template, we are getting ready for 9th strand avatar embodiment and moving up through these levels to restore the 10th, 11th, and 12th. And so it's something that through this, might not make a final sentence.
Okay. Let me look. I got all that. I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I can relate to that. I've been in this relationship with Morgan almost 7 years.
Oh, wow. I didn't know
you can talk about, but here's the thing. Whether it's couples, whether it's ascension, whether it's anything, okay? It's just like you talked about earlier, Ryan, when you were having these downloads and you're still questioning yourself. We all still do this, and there's a reason, because nobody can prove anything to anybody. But what has been a big part of the Soulogy experience, in my opinion, where there's no dogma and there's no doctrine and there's no leader, and there's no teacher, because we're all teachers, has been the explanation of the human experience. So all of the multidimensionality downloads, transmissions, and channelings are great, and we all do it. And as the days go by, more and more people are. But I think where we gain the most, and just my opinion, where we gain the most is from the explanations of the human experience going through this multidimensional transformation or trajectory. So just to put it simple, because I think people can really gain from this, whether it's in their own singular Hierogamic divine union within themselves or with someone else. How does that work? Does Ryan ever trigger you? Does Ryan ever trigger you? Do you ever get upset with him? What do you do when that happens? What does he do if it happens vice versa? These are the things I think that people really can learn from. This is the new code. This is how we get to where we're going. And actually, Reza Raia said something earlier in regard to this, and I just forgot what I was going to say, but it had to do with the real world application, the human part, you know. And I'm just curious as to how you guys deal with triggering each other. And I'm not saying this is gospel, but I've said this many times. I mean, in my relationship with Morgan, you know, from the soul perspective, I am soul, is the greatest gift are the triggers that she provides as the mirror for me. It's nothing about her. It's about my ability to manifest, in this case, my ability to manifest my divine feminine in a physical incarnation, okay, uh, where the messages are being presented to me about me. Okay, so can you give us a little bit of insight onto how you deal with the triggers? And do you do it individually? Do you do it together? And do you take time apart?
So thank you for bringing this back to this. And first of all, yes, we are human. So as humans are, we have feelings, we have emotions, and in the physical world, when we're, dealing with situations, it's like any other human being would, it's through communication, it's through working together, it's through listening and receiving and finding that balance within that. True Hierogamos, to be very simple with it, is the union of masculine and feminine. So when this is beginning to happen within yourself, the only way that the masculine and feminine within yourself can actually come together and come back into a state of wholeness is through the synthesis of polarities. So that means that anything that is still in separation, anything that is still wounded, anything that is still in conflict with itself, anything that is in opposition has to come up, has to come out in order to come together, in order to unify. So so if you are actually wanting to do this for yourself within, that means that all of your wounds, all of your triggers, everything you've got to face, you've got to bring up to the surface for yourself to be able to actually really bring that union together for yourself. Then when you come together with your partner, the same thing happens. So when we first came together, that is what was starting to happen. We're divine mirrors, we're reflections of each other because we're two halves of the whole. Both of us are whole, but then it's like when you get to the next level, okay, now it's this masculine and feminine pieces, both within and throughout, that are connecting to each other. And so now we're directly reflecting and mirroring each other. And through that mirror, we're then triggering anything and everything that is still held within and for each other, that is a wound, that, like I just said, that is still in conflict, still in opposition, that still needs to come together into a synthesized union to synthesize that polarity. And so, yeah, when we came together and as we progressed throughout our relationship with each other for like these last 2.5 years, there have been plenty of triggers. We've triggered each other quite a lot, actually. Well, and we tend to go through waves and phases of it, where at times, depending on, because things also sometimes happen in certain sequences and processes that are needing to happen. So it'll actually be multiple triggers, but it'll have like a theme to it. For example, like it'll have specific trauma wounding, like betrayal, abandonment, rejection, and they'll all come together in a sequencing that we're then moving through and processing through in our own human experience way. Like, for example, like a situation will present itself in our lives, whether it be with just each other, in our own lives, or even with our family members or whoever. Sometimes there's other people that are involved, the situation will come together and occur to trigger those wounds and those things so that we can go through the unification sequence of that. And so whenever, we try our best, like, we're not perfect, we're human, right? So we don't know always the perfect thing to do. We're always learning and we're always growing with each other. But one of the most important things I would say that has helped our journey through this process, because it's really difficult when you're when you're really triggered, or when you're dealing with all these emotions and drama that's coming up, or that you're triggering each other. One of the most helpful things for us has been our devotional templates. Like, we actually held a ceremony with each other, and we made it very clear what we were promising to each other, what we were going to devote ourselves to, what we would be committed to, no matter what. And at the very core of it, it was basically that we were going to love each other through it all.
Yeah.
Basically,
That
like
we
a
were going
marriage.
to, that we were going to love each other through it all, and that no matter what came up, no matter how hard it gets, no matter, how triggered we are, to the point, if, like, let's say, like, I'm just like, I need to get in the car and I need space and I need to just go for a couple hours.
Right.
But we're always going to come back together, and we love each other through it all. And that, and making it very clear, like, why we're here as well, our service, what we're in service to, what we're dedicated to, and making that promise to each other, to ourselves, to God, and holding that Trinity has been one of the most helpful things.
Right.
No matter what comes up, and, working on, we always try our best to, like, hold a balance between receiving, listening, and sharing, and communicating. And it's a process, of learning how to healthfully, like, communicate, express ourselves, and move through those triggers that come up.
Well, I love what you said, because the human is a factor, and like you said, sometimes I just want to get in the car and I'm just going to drive, right, or whatever. I think that's the missing link. I mean, if you look at the signs, the omens, the memories that come back, like you talked about earlier, with seeing the different faces, or in our case, the morphine, and seeing the different lives. That's all great.
Mm-hmm.
And that all validates at least the strong possibility or potential of the connection in this incarnation. But there's still a human being aspect that carries the God substance, that at a very human level can't be ignored. And I think this is where, and you just said it perfectly, it's not all, rainbows and unicorns. And I think this is the biggest negative connotation from the term twin flame, where people think, oh, I met my twin flame, so now everything's perfect, and I'm just gonna glide through the ascension now. But it's actually the greatest catalyst, and you explained it so well, Raia. And but like, I love the way that you acknowledge the human part of you, of both of you, that needs to be contended with. And so, for as an example, I love what you said, and I've heard it before from people as they explain, they understand the value of the interaction, of the triggers, of the friction, and so on. But how does that actually play out? I mean, I think this, what you talked about, I've heard people talk about as well, where they're very upfront. We're going to return to love every time. Maybe we even do something daily to reaffirm this. But I think where people don't get the information, or what people might need to hear to bring into higher alignment the understanding of these connections, is, how do you say that to somebody? Hey, Ryan, you're projecting on me at this moment. I mean, even with the knowledge or the gnosis that we have, it doesn't convert automatically the programs that we have, as you were talking about, abandonment and so on. But, like, how does that work? Are you able to say to the other, hey, listen, we're in the danger zone right now, I'm going to take a break? Or, hey, you're projecting, and the other one says, you know what, you're right. Or what about when they say, no, I'm not? You're the one that's out of whack. You know what I mean? I think this is the real new code that we're building, in particular in terms of these connections, which are going to take us to where we're all headed. Because how can you have oneness with everybody if you can't have it with your partner? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. So first of all, yes, I agree. The belief that twin flame unions are just peaceful is a toxic belief in itself, and it deflects most people from actually having the devotional template to stay in alignment with a partnership when it gets hard. And this is why in the beginning we were saying, in many ways, if you are actually in a relationship where there's no challenge, no growth, it's just sunshine and rainbows and bliss, this is actually many times indicative of what could be sent as a false twin, or what would be perceived as that to keep someone stagnant on their growth. Once again, not always in all situations, just a level of discernment, because those of us that are in the true unions, as you're saying, there's a level of catalyst that must occur. It's the only way to get through it. And so it's something that now, and how these can manifest, because there's two things that I want to illuminate on this, because everybody's different. Everybody's unique. Most people are going to have partnerships and relationships where they're going to be learning these things before they get to their actual hierogamic partnership and union and such. But across the board, because there are certain things that, like, when we actually begin to understand these things and can actually begin to learn these things, we will actually begin as a collective to circumvent and stop many of the issues that have been impacting relationship dynamics, regardless of what stage they're at. Because there are a lot of things that are going on that have been put into the collectives that cause victim-victimizer programming and various things. So even as our families going through this process of meeting partnerships and stuff, many are getting very traumatized, many are getting very wounded, many are picking up imprinting and stuff that is distorting their ability to work peacefully or harmoniously with their next partnership. So it's almost getting to that point where, unless that next partnership, especially the older and older we get, unless they are trained in trauma healing or have had that own experience or have worked with it themselves, it becomes increasingly harder for people to hold that space for another person, while it can further increment and create a loop of the other partner feeling traumatized or not able to receive help. So when we get in stuff, there's different forms of manifestations of the depth. Like, if we are actually if we are on top of what we need to be doing, it's actually very graceful. Like, we might have elevated stuff, or we might have be talking in elevated tones and stuff like that, but it's actually but we generally can come back around. However, what we have noticed, because it's not just energies and triggers that go on. There's three things that at least we can speak for our side that we deal with, which are the triggers for the healing that are natural. And then we have our own initiations that are going on, that are challenges in our own ways to grow and to step into our kingship, into our queenship. And then we have straight attacks. And we have to learn what the attacks and interference are. And how, because many times you can be being attacked and thinking it's your own thing, and you're spending all this time on your own self, just getting attacked over and over and over, not realizing it's coming from an outer side. Yeah. But if you are only thinking you're getting attacked and can't address the inner side and don't have that discernment, you're going to miss something big. So the Hieros Gamma, especially as we're getting to the restoration of the highest templates, at the core, it can be understood that this division of the mechanics creates warring between the mother and father, between the masculine and feminine. As beloveds, it creates a perception and an illusion that you are at war with each other. And so there are many times when, especially if we are not aware, or if we are haven't this happened even after just a couple weeks before we were doing just these last couple weeks, actually, before we launched the Menti art program. All of a sudden I was waking in bed, body shaking, she would say little things, and all of a sudden I'm erupting, just crying and having so much anger coming out of me, and I'm angry at her. I don't ever experience anger. And I'm frustrated, and I'm feeling all of these things, and it's making me be I don't even want to do our work.
So what did you do? Was this recently?
Yeah. This was actually, and I sat there and I had to go back, because I was wait, because at first the thing is we have to remind ourselves, this is not who we are.
Yeah.
We never want to war with each other. So if there's a warring coming up, we're okay, this is not us. This is something else trying to get us to play this game, but we don't consent to this game. So on that day, I was oh my gosh, I was I have never been this bad. I was because it's not fair to her, but equally, it's not because of who we are. When I do that, it's self-torture to myself. If I hurt her, if I hurt anybody, it destroys me internally. And so afterwards, I had to be I was baby, I was something really bad is going on. I feel I know that there are things inside of me that are authentic feelings I have. but they might be 1% there and they're being turned up 1,000%. And making it seem like, because that's how the attacks, they find the unhealed things and they turn it up so it's something that might not have been a big deal is now the worst deal ever. And so in that point, I had to stop because sometimes it's really hard. And when it's subtle in the beginning, you might not notice it. But when it gets to a point when you're noticing anger or emotions that I don't hold, that you're like, this is not me, I had to stop. And the first thing I said is, when was the last time we commanded our space and cleared our space? We're supposed to be doing this daily. Little did I know that because so many people have been reaching out and coming in so many different energy fields, I hadn't done it in 2 weeks. And so 2 weeks had gone by with me just not even taking care. It's like not showering for 2 weeks, basically. And by that day, we had so much in our field and from other people's fields and energies, just from the, especially even just being on live.
Just being on the planet in the last 2 or 3 months. So what you're saying, I think what you're saying is what I've experienced, and then what I've heard from a lot of couples, even as recent as yesterday. Because the energy from mid-October, whether we're talking a couple, a small group, or an individual, has been off the hook. But it sounds like what you're talking about, and just add to it or subtract. You're talking about this space. You're kind of talking about pulling all of your aspects back in, all of your energy, all your power back in, as an individual, to be a pillar in this couple, right? In that moment. Is that what you're talking about?
It's more like because we are multidimensional and interdimensional. We are so massive. We don't have to bring everything into what we perceive to be here. We can be anchored and stationed on many places. But the issue is because of we got particle layers, antiparticle layers, we got parallels, we got many different body systems. So there's a lot of things, like there's, just to go through the list, there's a lot of black magic that can get picked up. Like even on my first call with you, where some of the things I dropped with you, I got tons of black magic attacks on the interdimensional channels afterwards.
I don't want to run out of room, and I don't want you to stop talking. I want to get some clarification, even in regard to the multidimensionality, because we can all relate to this. But I guess another way to put it is, there are times, and let's just talk about individuals, where we can't be out there. We're human for a reason. These are all things that are given. What's not given is where I'm at. It's not all predetermined. So this is the gold, right? And I guess what I was trying to say is, in that moment when you had this situation going on with yourself, which I really appreciate you being so open about it, did you, I don't mean pull all your aspects back in, I just mean bringing yourself into balance, and bringing yourself into, let's just say, calmness, and really having to get in touch. This is more of a question. Is it really having to get in touch and not ignore or spiritually bypass your human aspect, so you can be a pillar for this connection? Is that closer to it?
Yeah, and I know, because a lot of times people will go and be like, oh, this is galactic, we need to go to the human side, or this is human side, we need to go to the galactic. And many times, and this is what we're sharing, there is no division. If they're still seeing the division, this is a form of division inside the self that really needs to be healed. We're dealing with this all across the board. We are just like when people talk about 50 or fifth dimensional ascension. This is a limiting factor. We are multidimensional. We are meant to be omnidimensional and have access to all the spheres. So there are forms that we've got to have these understandings with them. So this is why they have to go back and forth, because if you are just trying to go inside and deal with the physical sides in a union and do not know how to protect your field or clear your space, it's going to be absolute hell. But if you are just trying to clear your space and don't know how to go internally, it's so very, very simply put, though, is like, because I know we're limited on time, is that the inner side is when we can go into our heart, when we can go into love, when we can go into compassion and can actually get there. These are the frequencies: love, joy, peace, and unity consciousness that overrides that and brings that to a pace of balance. However, when you are under, this has to be wisdom and knowledge every person on the planet is learning, just like brushing your teeth and washing your hands and taking a shower. Like, if you do not know how to take care of your field, You could be doing everything perfectly, and what will come through, it's just going to pull you down subtly. So they put weight under weight after weight after weight till eventually it pulls you down. So there is a side that with this, it's something that there are points that like your body will be so under attack. And this is why it's important to have a partnership that can help, or you to have the training yourself, where until you actually go in and fortify and create that field. Because sometimes when this happens, it'll take me 20 minutes to over an hour to actually start going through, and you'll clear one side, and then finally you can breathe. You get rid of one scalar attack, and then finally at that point, you are then able to process your own organic emotions, at which point we can start crying or feeling and supporting each other. But until we get to that point, even if we want to, we have beings and interference that are trying to stop us. They want everything they can to have us not be able to work it out, and to stay in division and to stay into pain. And this at the same time happens every single time we do any big project, a new course.
I mean, that's interesting. Somebody put up a comment a minute ago, and it was, this person just started coming on, unnameable reality. How can something that is everywhere be attacked? And this is a whole other issue, I think, but I kind of agree with what they say, because like it's no different than a trigger that's presented to me by the mirror that's Morgan. Let's just use this example. Any attack that comes my way is something that I've ordered, something that I need, something that is showing me that there's some work to be done. And really, you're describing it yourself. You know, it's an alert to you to go to work and to clear your field, or however you go about it, because everybody's got their own way of doing it. But yeah, there's so much we could talk about in terms of that, especially in this time and space that we're in on this particular day on the linear timeline, and as we go into 2022. But before we get out of here, I want to ask you, each one of you. Let me ask you this: in your 2+ years together, do you see any type of connection or relationship directly to the collective masculine and collective feminine energy of the earth as a whole?
Yes, this is the entirety of our alchemy and mission that we work with.
Right. Yeah, I'm a big believer in, as the individual goes, so goes the collective. So, okay. So Reza Raia, I'm sorry. I love the name because I've never seen it before. What do you admire and love about Ryan the most?
I would say his essence, like the pure core consciousness that he is what I absolutely admire. It's I see everything internally, and I feel everything internally as well. And this is how I'm able to then perceive, understand, see what's going on in the field or whatever I'm doing and interacting with. And so whenever I tune into his essence, what I see from within is just, it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And I feel it as well, you know.
That's that feeling that you're having through your body from the first day, huh?
Yeah.
What about you, Ryan? What do you love or admire most about her?
I know I'm so excited for when I master the art of simplicity in this lifetime. But just I guess we could call it the essence. I appreciate and love the totality of the divinity of the manifestation of my beloved. That of which I've remembered and seen as the highest manifestations, and all of our work and missions prior to the creation of this universal construct, as well as all of the fall points, all of the low points, all of the different lessons and manifestations that have happened. And I love the fact that, like, even after certain things that have happened that have left us being separated, that we're finally back together in this lifetime, or just with everything that's gone on, to truly try to erase the feminine's pure essence and replace it with an inorganic construct, that through it all, that you never, there's just this infinite eternal spark of just love and purity and innocence that I've never found in anybody outside of myself, even though we've had so much going on, and it's something I lost and spent the last 8 years trying to find back. Like, it's something that's like, I don't have words other than just the totality of all that she is in every manifestation.
There you go. Which is a perfect segue into the final comment in question. I saw I share memes, every day into the Soulogy group, and I saw one today. It was the first one I saw when I went to go look, and it was the goddess does not rule the earth, or no, I'm sorry, the goddess does not rule the universe. The goddess is the universe. And I realize we can get caught up in semantics and the to the nth degree of the literal definition, or but I mean the energy of that seems to be appropriate from my point of view. And you just mentioned this a second ago. That's why it's such a great segue, where obviously, and everybody's got their own narratives and their own take on it. But when you get right down to, we were all raised to believe God was a man. And, the rest can speak for itself. Look at the different religions and so on. We know this. The patriarchal is a template that was utilized in our creative genius that we all came together on in this divine orchestration that we're all in now. But in terms of the relationship, and I'd love to hear from both of y'all, how does that fit? What's different? What is the role of her now? I mean, like, obviously, if we're all coming out of the same template, which we all are, I don't care who we are, because nobody's walking on water. But the role of the feminine, in each and every incarnated human being has changed. It's being altered. She's rising. You can put it in a lot of different ways. But in terms of on a personal level, and in contrast or in context of old relationships and such, how does that work for y'all? What is her role? What is her presence? How is she supported? What's the payoff, so to speak? And not a great way to put it, but what's the outcome of this new occurrence that's happening to every single one of us, that's happening to the world as a collective? The goddess is, and again, this is an energetic statement. The goddess is all of it, because obviously, I don't know of any masculine creations that can actually generate the next progeny, the next child, right? But how does that play into your relationship? Is it something you talk about? Is it something that's occurring? Does it have any bearing at all? Can you just tell us where you're coming from in terms of, and I'll use the word, in terms of the goddess resurrecting and how that affects us at the human level?
And I've got something very particular I'm feeling called to share on this, but did you feel like you had something to share too?
Yeah, thank you for asking such a great question. For us, I would say, before we met, Ryan can express it in his own way too, but he was going through the restoration of the Christed masculine template. And then when we came together, he had received that it was time for him to start working on the solar Christed feminine template. And so this has been something that we've been working on together.
And this was a few months before I actually came together with her.
Yeah. And so, but then when we came together, it's not really something that I would say we need to really think about or focus on, because this is actually just naturally happening. It's like what naturally happens when the Hierogamic partnership of masculine and feminine come together, and then they start catalyzing that healing process for each other through the triggers, through bringing up all of the wounds and the things that still need to be addressed and healed and resolved. And so, in our own ways together, we're helping each other resurrect the masculine and feminine within. And in that process, it's this it's you know, we're still learning how to navigate this for ourselves, how to best support each other, how to again, as I was expressing earlier, listen versus speaking and sharing, and how to communicate in a healthy way. But the support that Ryan gives to me and what that does for me to be able, like this level of space that he holds for me, and what that does for me to be able to rise in my own self, is the same thing that I would say that is needed for the dynamic between masculine and feminine, for the feminine to rise, and then in my own way, for me to then support him and hold space for the masculine to rise as well.
Right.
This is, and it's amazing that you're bringing this up as finalizing the statement, and your explanation is just beautiful.
Thanks.
Because we do see, and this goes into the fall and division of the Melchizedek order, the fall and division of our original family, all of this. It's the balance and equanimate or equal dynamic of the God-goddess dynamic, of the mother, the father. And we already know, as you're saying, primarily there's the father, the masculine God principle. Now, there's a huge emphasis on the feminine, or the mother, the divine mother principle, and the goddess principle coming in. And then there are those that are saying the goddess is taking over. The goddess is the one that's stepping in, transitioning from this, it's the divine feminine, the mother, that's being returned. No, in the most simplest ways, this everybody's going to have their own perception, their own experience of it. But the most simplest way of this is that there is a return of the goddess and the feminine energy in its entirety. Like, this is something that it's hard to explain. Just like people are like, oh, when we're all one, how could you be attacked if you're, all these things. It's like, we don't have time to explain the mechanics. We're just sharing what's actually we're dealing with. And everybody's kind of awakening up to this. And as we can get on the same page, we can start to support each other on this level of healing. And this is accelerating the collective awakening and ascension process in itself. In short, though, the true feminine consciousness, which we refer to as the solar feminine for easy conscious association, was unplugged and removed. They installed the lunar feminine. This is why the sun has been a masculine light, generates its own light. The moon, the feminine, it can't generate its own light. It reflects the light of the sun. No, the masculine and feminine are equal. The feminine is not above the masculine, just like the masculine has never been above the feminine. There are those that believe that the goddess is coming in. It's about the feminine energy coming in and taking over for the masculine. This is an inversion of perception that comes from trauma and pain that is also being healed on a collective level at this time. It is something this is what happened with the fall of the Melchizedek order, a patriarchal slant, the division between masculine and feminine, that kicked out the feminine, so to speak, and left just the Melchizedek order. So anytime you see a Melchizedek order or lineage that does not have a feminine as equal on the councils, you can already tell they're part of the fallen factions. So in short, though, it's something that what I had been told before, because I had spent years on my covenant before working on my own development side. I didn't even know that this was the solar Christ masculine. Like, when I had Christ Ryan coming in the years before, I didn't resonate with it. I was like, that can't be me, because I didn't understand what Christ was. I didn't really understand what this was, and I didn't understand how I could authentically be that myself. And, especially when we're going through the transfiguration, resurrection phases. So there was a point after my final initiations, and this is what actually was the first time I was taken outside of this system in this incarnation, which began the downstepping and the completion of the 46 days of downstep, the Solar Christ Masculine Template. Mm-hmm. Immediately upon completing that, I was told I was then being put on the resurrection of the Solar Christ Feminine. It was then about 2 to 3 months later, me and my beloved came together. But this is why from then, my entire embodiment these last few years has been the resurrection of the Solar Christ Feminine, and then the alchemical merging of Hieros Gamos, so that I would be in alignment to merge these polarities by the age of 30 to 33. And I just turned 30 last month. Mm-hmm. So it's something that so we're right on track. And so, a lot of work. And so with the rise of this, keep in mind, I have had to spend countless time on pentacles, geomantic templates, physical and etheric grid system structures, just to resurrect the feminine. I had to go through all the platonic solids, geometric templates. I had to completely, our teams had to completely restore and reformat the dark matter template.
It's like rebuilding her body, because what happened to the Divine Mother, it's very similar to what happened to the Divine Father, but her body was ripped into parts. It was blown up into bits, you know, and so it's like having to piece together and repair all of that trauma, fracturing, separation. You know, it's been piecing it back together, resurrecting it, you know, bringing it back to life has been a huge process.
And this is why, even with that, this is why we had to go out to Kauai and various locations to start building a new womb construct. There's so much that's had to go on. But long story short, we've had to actually spend years and a lot of time just to build piece by piece by piece, then work with groups across the planet just to bring these into the codex to be able to hold the template to start to resurrect this consciousness. This is why the feminine is returning. But very clearly, and especially in the beginning when we got together, because I needed a mirror of my beloved in a physical feminine vessel to help rise the feminine, but to equally help my internal feminine rise.
Yeah.
And there was time in the beginning, because it's one thing to be on the masculine template. The feminine template, you're dealing with whole new emotions, all of these types of things that, like, in the beginning when we came together, I had held space for so many people and I had gone through so many things. But now it's like certain emotions and triggers were so much harder to deal with. And my teams were like they're like, listen, there are things that she's not going to be able to see. She's not going to be able to understand. You've got to be patient with this. It's a process. There's also different age groups we're holding. I'm more closer to the avatar, where when we came together, she was more closer to the oversoul. So different little like biological age things and stuff. So I was being told specifically, you have to be patient. You have to learn you've already been trained through this. Now you have to learn to stay balanced, stay grounded, stay neutral, stay compassionate, like be there for your beloved, because you are going to need to be there until the feminine can rise to a certain point, at which point I will need the help from my beloved. That I will only be able to go so far to hold this pillar to help her rise to a point, at which point I will need her help, at which point then we will be able to rise together as equals, as one.
Yeah.
So the return, to answer the question, it is the unified, this is what Hierogamic says, the reunified God, Goddess, eternal Christed child, returned, the Trinity restored for all. And this is
and I think it's just about, like, you know, and as both are rising together in their own ways, it's beautiful just to see the dynamic of how each works together, and because each as you said, you know, each has their role, right, and each plays their role. And so, you know, it's a learning process and experience of remembrance, learning, remembering, growing, of how we can best like support each other, and which areas that we can play our role for each other. And that in itself is reflecting the same dynamic that's happening throughout our collective consciousness of the roles that are being held between masculine and feminine, both within and throughout. And so, you know, like a lot of the characteristics or traits that are associated with feminine versus masculine are not as set in stone. You know, it's like the masculine also is meant to be nurturing and loving, just like how the feminine is also meant to be strong and like have that warrior courageous aspect as well. So, you know, it's learning how to teach each other how to listen, how to support, how to communicate, how to you know, come back into that neutral space. Because, like, you know, as you were asking in the previous questions, what do we do when we get triggered? How do we move through that process? Again, it's like going back into a state of neutrality every single time that we start going off and getting triggered and angry at each other, or whatever's coming up.
We're still learning how to do this.
It's like trying our best to just be like, hey, I'm triggered right now. The other person will be like, I'm triggered right now. Okay, we're both triggered. We're both acknowledging that we have stuff coming up. And then, okay, like, let's remind each other that we love each other, that we're here for each other, that we're here to support each other. How can we best support each other right now?
And learning at the same time, because sometimes she's really needed space, right? She's like, I just need space. Yeah. And for me, I'm like, I just want to hug you. Like, so it's been like a learning option. Yeah. Like, what do you need?
Yeah. It's like we love each other. Get out of my space. Get out of my face right now. No, well, no, I think they're you both great answers. I mean, you know, but you know, and it only makes sense because if we're in a patriarchal system, which is given a false power to the masculine side of us, which mostly we see in a physical male incarnate, not always. But I mean, all we got to do is look at the heads of our religious institutions, governmental institutions, and so on. So let's just call bullshit on it. You know what I mean? So the bottom line is that this power this false power of that's been imprinted upon the majority of the male incarnates isn't even conscious. You know, like she's going to be more conscious of that, just as we might be more conscious of what she can't see in herself. But it just, it just makes sense that, going back to that meme, it's not about the literal of what it said. It's about a moment in time. It would only make sense that she's leading because he's falling. He's removing his false power to find his true power. Where she, and we all know this, anyone that's been in these communities the last 10 years, and even today, even today, if you look at the demographics of Soulogy, which have changed over 10 years, it's still 65-70% feminine. And there's a reason for that. And I just think at some point we've all got to kind of come to the realization, and I'm speaking energetically, it's time to hand the ball off to her. And yes, we're going to lead together, but at this point, she's the one that initiated this thing a few years ago, on or about 2012, and we don't see the collective mirroring the work we've done quite yet, in terms of, let's just say more female leaders, more flowing, free flowing kind of streams versus the hard and fast straight lines of the masculine, the control of the masculine versus the natural nature of the feminine. I mean, it's all happening, but I find it very intriguing and very interesting to see how it plays out as we talk to these different couples. And you guys have given us some great insights. So I just want to say,
one thing I wanted to briefly bring in with your comment to the feminine, in regards to the feminine, is we've seen the same side too, where even in our own work and the groups we work with, it's like 90-95% feminine.
absolutely.
And so it's like one of those things, and pretty much all around the board, it's largely is the feminine that is awakening. And I actually really appreciated your just illumination on the fact that as this construct, as this false power in the masculine is being removed, it's requiring a natural level of fall or acclimation to get out of it. And that is actually, it's what we refer to as the false king of tyranny architecture. Our teams have been, and many teams have been diligently dismantling this actually fully. It's not part of who we truly are, but we've been adopted to believe that it is. So it's actually like, it's just incredible for you to have identified that. And I do want to say that at the same time, this is why there's like a call out for so many of the brothers and that are out here, because we have so many beautiful, like solar feminine that are rising, that are ready to meet, that are ready for union, are ready for partnership. And so it's like, it's like, as far as like, and there are such a small number of guys on the planet that are actually embodying and even just making the decision to start going on this path. So I do just want to put something out there for any of the guys that are out here. If you are really willing to put your ego aside and like go through these initiations that are here for each and one of us on the planet, like you are already being prepared to have the most incredible, beautiful goddess come into your life to support you at this time. So, and I know our beloved
and
sister,
we didn't even get to the sacred sex. Holy crap. I can't believe I actually went through a show with a couple for an hour and 45 minutes and didn't get to the sacred sex. But hey, maybe next time. I appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Thank you for sharing and being so open. And wish you the best always. And see you later down the road in 2022.
We love you so much.
Thank you for having us.
And all of our family, we love you too.